Colors of Hope. The small town of Marigold Hollow had long been painted in shades of gray. The streets were lined with cracked sidewalks, abandoned shops, and houses whose paint peeled like dying leaves. The town had seen better days, before the factory closed, before families moved away, before the river began to run murky and still. Yet amidst this faded town, a young artist named Sophie Hale carried a spark, a belief that even in the darkest corners, beauty and hope could flourish. Sophie had grown up in Marigold Hollow, surrounded by the stories of struggle and hardship that echoed through generations. But she refused to see the town as hopeless. To her, every wall, every alley, every broken window was a canvas waiting for color. Sophie had a vision. She would bring the colors of hope back to the town, one brushstroke at a time. Each morning, Sophie would walk the streets, carrying her paints, brushes, and a sketchbook filled with vibrant ideas. She painted murals on abandoned buildings, floral patterns on fences, and playful designs on sidewalks where children once played. Passers-by often stopped to watch, curious but skeptical. "Why bother?" asked Mr. Green, the town grocer, shaking his head. "No one cares anymore. Everything's falling apart." Sophie smiled, holding up her brush. "Because someone has to care," she replied. "And even if just one person smiles when they see color, it's worth it. Hope grows where you plant it." At first, the townspeople were indifferent. They went about their days, trudging through gray streets, avoiding broken storefronts and puddles. But little by little, something began to change. A child stopped to watch Sophie paint a mural of a bright sunflower on a crumbling wall. The boy's eyes lit up. "It's beautiful," he exclaimed. He ran home to tell his parents. Soon, more people paused. A shopkeeper who had been discouraged began repainting his own storefront, inspired by Sophie's example. A group of teenagers cleaned up the alleyways, decorating them with colorful chalk art. And as the colors spread, so did a subtle shift in mood. Laughter returned, smiles appeared, and the town felt lighter, as if the grayness itself was slowly lifting. Sophie's greatest project, however, was yet to come. In the town square stood a large, abandoned community hall, once the heart of Marigold Hollow, now silent and lifeless. Sophie envisioned turning it into a beacon of hope, a place where art, learning, and community could flourish again. She approached the town council with her idea. "We can restore the hall, paint it with bright colors, and fill it with creativity. It will remind everyone that life, even after hardship, can be beautiful." The council members hesitated. "It will cost money, Sophie, and who knows if people will come." Sophie met their doubts with determination. "If we do nothing, it will stay gray forever. Hope requires action. Let's give the town a chance to shine." With the council's reluctant approval, Sophie began gathering volunteers, materials, and funds. The work was grueling. The hall was full of debris, mold, and broken furniture. Rainstorms threatened the progress. Volunteers complained, and Sophie herself often felt exhausted and discouraged. One evening, after a particularly long day of painting, Sophie sat on the steps of the hall, her hands covered in paint, her heart heavy with doubt. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "You're amazing," said an elderly woman, Mrs. Langley, who had watched Sophie work quietly for weeks. "You're giving this town something it hasn't had in decades, hope. Don't give up now." Sophie smiled faintly, but tears welled in her eyes. I worry it won't be enough. What if the town doesn't care?" Mrs. Langley placed a hand on Sophie's shoulder. "Hope is like color. Sometimes, the first brushstroke doesn't make a difference. But every stroke adds up. One day, you'll see the entire town glowing." Encouraged, Sophie returned to work the next morning, determined to paint not just walls, but hearts. Weeks turned into months. The community hall slowly transformed. Murals of vibrant landscapes, whimsical animals, and bright abstract patterns covered the walls. Rooms were cleared, cleaned, and decorated with books, art supplies, and cozy seating. Children painted alongside Sophie, laughing as their creations came to life. Teenagers organized music, poetry, and craft workshops. The hall had become a hive of activity and joy. The day finally came for the grand opening. The entire town gathered, standing outside the hall, unsure of what to expect. Sophie's heart raced as she pulled back the tarp covering the entrance. The crowd gasped. Murals glowed in the sunlight, colors dancing across every surface. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the scent of fresh paint, a sensory reminder that the town could be reborn. Tears streamed down Sophie's face as she watched the villagers smile, hug, and marvel at the transformation. She realized that her dream, once small and fragile like a seed, had blossomed into a living, breathing testament to hope and positivity. Among the crowd, a boy approached Sophie shyly. "Miss Hale," he said softly, I didn't think this town could ever feel happy again. But seeing the colors, it feels like a new beginning." Sophie knelt to meet his gaze. "That's exactly what it is. Every day is a new beginning. Every act of hope, no matter how small, adds color to the world." The boy smiled, inspired, and ran off to tell his friends. Sophie realized then that hope was contagious, spreading from heart to heart, from generation to generation. As the years went by, Marigold Hollow continued to change. The community hall became a center of learning and creativity, hosting art classes, community meetings, and celebrations. The streets, once gray and lifeless, were adorned with murals, flowers, and public art. Local businesses reopened, inspired by Sophie's vision, and new families moved into the town, bringing fresh energy and ideas. Sophie continued to paint, teach, and inspire, but she also learned another important lesson: that hope was not a solitary journey. It was strengthened by community, collaboration, and shared belief. She encouraged everyone to contribute, reminding them that each person's actions could make a difference. One summer afternoon, Sophie organized a festival in the town square to celebrate the town's transformation. There were music performances, art exhibitions, and games for children. As the sun set, Sophie stood on a small stage, looking at the faces around her, faces once weary and hopeless, now radiant with pride and joy. She addressed the crowd. Marigold Hollow was gray, and life was hard. But together, we chose to see the colors of hope. We chose positivity. We chose to act. Every wall painted, every smile shared, every hand held helped bring this town back to life. The crowd erupted in applause, cheering not just for Sophie, but for themselves, for their resilience, and for the shared belief that life could be brighter. Years later, Sophie walked through the town she had helped transform. Children skipped along the colorful streets, neighbors greeted each other warmly, and laughter filled the air. The murals she had painted, and the ones created by the community, served as permanent reminders that hope, optimism, and collective action can transform even the darkest places. She paused at the community hall, now bustling with students, artists, and musicians. A young girl approached her, holding a paintbrush. "Miss Hale," she said, eyes shining, "I want to help bring hope to other towns too. Can you teach me?" Sophie smiled, her heart full. "Of course. That's the true power of hope. It grows when shared, and it multiplies when passed on." As the girl ran off to begin her first mural, Sophie looked around at Marigold Hollow, now alive with color, creativity, and joy. She realized that hope is not simply an emotion. It is a force that can move hearts, ignite communities, and inspire generations. And in that moment, Sophie understood fully. Even in the bleakest places, when people choose positivity and action, the colors of hope can paint a brighter world. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, hit like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment below. I'll see you in the next video.